As the 2023 season winds to an end, it does so with a bit of a wet thud. The fans had at least been hoping for some tussling and fighting for second right up until the final flag of the final race, even if Verstappen had the number one spot wrapped up from pretty much the start of the season. But that hope is becoming more and more faint as Mercedes seems set to end on a low after their disappointing performance in Brazil, labelled horrible and miserable by Toto Wolff. They had teased the fans with a brighter future in Mexico and the US, but rain clouds seem to have rolled in and who knows if any rays of sunshine lay just out on the horizon. And then there's Ferrari, who are akin to Jeremy Clarkson firing an AK-47. A lot's going to happen, but hitting the target isn't one of them. So with both teams presenting as unlikely contenders for Red Bull next season, why is it that Mercedes are moving up and Ferrari are moving down? And if Ferrari can't pull it together, just what the hell is Charles LeClerc meant to do? Is a move to McLaren possible? Well, we think it's more likely than it might first appear. Stay tuned to find out why. So let's start with Ferrari, which is to say, where to start. Such is the litany of failures and mistakes that they've captained over the season. Fred Vasseur, the man at the top, has been taking increasing amounts of heat for this. And why not? He's paid enough. But in classic Scuderia style, some fans are beginning to holler for a replacement. But honestly, bringing in yet another team principal to fix the issues in Ferrari is like using a water balloon to put out a forest fire. And even if it was a sensible idea to start searching for a Vasseur replacement, who the hell would be suicidal enough to take it? Do they need a leader or a firefighter? Because Fred seems to find himself mostly occupied with the latter. This weekend was a prime example of the firefighting that he's had to do far too many times this season, and while he is certainly better at it than his predecessor, it still can't be easy. Speaking of the mechanical failure in Brazil that saw Charles Leclerc go from starting in P2 to not starting at all, Vasseur said, "It's more than disappointing. We bet everything on the race and we were very focused today. And for a technical problem, we didn't even start the race. Charles is very disappointed and so is the team. We still need to check the car and see what happened in detail. It was a problem in the system, but we haven't touched the car yet, so I don't have much information. It wasn't a mistake from Charles." But there were signs of trouble before Sunday's race, with Sainz during the sprint having to lift and coast from early on in the event due to what was described as a small error with the cooling. And while temperature management was something that was present across the field, Ferrari seemed to be suffering with it to a more severe extent than anyone else. And there's no escaping the fact that virtually every team running Ferrari power units experienced technical frailties and failures that threatened to end their race early, or in the case of the Alfa Romeo drivers, did end their races early. Don't be fooled though, these technical issues in the fight for P2 in the constructors aren't limited to the red corners. Mercedes have been through fault or misfortune, unable to finish with both cars in the points or even on track at all in 5 of the last 8 races, with this weekend in Brazil proving to be a real low point for the team, with Toto Wolff calling it the team's worst performance in 13 years. Although you can't help but feel he might be engaging a bit of selective memory there. When questioned about the performances in Brazil, Wolff lamented, "It is totally baffling and unacceptable. We're a proper structure, a solid team, but that didn't look like a solid team today. For me personally, it was the worst weekend in 13 years. The development of that car has been about putting plasters on something that was not right, and it shows that it's so unpredictable that it can swing either side. Fundamentally, we will have a different car next year, and today proves that it's the right thing to do." Which, given the decision to reinstate Golden Boy James Allison, swapping out Mike Elliott, it should come as no surprise that Mercedes are apparently going for a completely fresh start with the car. But at this point, the question is, do they have the expertise, enough clean and clear data to really make the technical changes required to compete with Red Bull? Every attempt Mercedes has taken to move forwards has failed, from zero pod to zero Allison. They just have categorically not worked and have led to more time being wasted as they attempted to disentangle themselves from their mistakes. In fact, for the vast majority of this year, Mercedes has been outperformed by at least one customer team, which suggests that Mercedes' problems run deep, perhaps too deep, until the new regs in 2026. And this is where serious questions arise for both Mercedes and Ferrari. In the long term, when the new regs dawn, who will still be blindly wedded to the two teams' engines? And both teams have in the past leveraged the data from their customer teams to improve both their engines' performance and reliability. But that cornucopia is set to end, and at a point where both teams seem more likely than not to be ending on low notes. Now, Mercedes, to their credit, have built up more of a solid reputation. They had years at the top in the previous 2 seasons. It could be argued, on the grand scale, are nothing more than a short blip on an otherwise upward trajectory. And that's why I think Mercedes are the better bet for the future than the Scuderia. Ferrari is simply a whole different kettle of fish. Their customer teams seem to constantly be experiencing issues, varying from performance limiting to, like Sauber this past weekend, performance ending. At this point, Ferrari has more than the next few race seasons on the line. They need to show the world that, quite simply, red is fast. Audi will soon be involved in F1 and eager to prove themselves, I'm sure. And with Honda coming back in, albeit taking Aston from Mercedes, nevertheless, if it goes well, it could be Ferrari's customer teams soon following Aston. And to finish kicking Ferrari while they're down, let's talk about Charles LeClerc. He must surely be getting fed up with Ferrari by now. In Formula One, drivers do have to bide their time and stick it out with teams for the good and the bad. It takes time for everything to come together. It took Verstappen 5 years at Red Bull to see him rise to the dominant position he's in now. Charles, too, has been at Ferrari for 5 years, but unlike Max, isn't even close to championship contention. But if Charles has had enough of Ferrari, where on earth can he go? Well, McLaren, in my opinion, is an outside possibility. Next season will give us a good idea of whether they've had a few lucky breaks or really have turned the proverbial corner. Tinfoil hat time, I know, so strap it on with me. McLaren are, of course, full for the time being, but I honestly think there's a chance Lando goes to Red Bull. Now, Christian Horner has said repeatedly he doesn't want a number 2 driver who can compete, but with Max talking about retirement so frequently, Christian might be forced into some succession planning. You need to get the talent when you can, while you can after all. And if Lando does go, then Charles may fill that spot. There is, of course, a lot of talk of it being sensible for him to stay until the new regs to see what happens. But why? The new regs are a gamble for everyone. Go or stay, who knows what lies ahead in that world. And ultimately, new regs won't fix the structural issues at the heart of Ferrari's woes. So what do you think? What are your crazy conspiracy theories for the future driver lineups? Let me know in the comments.